Good evening and welcome to Taking the Initiative. I'm Reverend Bill Kunze. I am your host for these weekly conversations with people in the medical field, people who are in public service, people in nonprofits and voluntary organizations of all sorts, all of them making our lives better and our communities better. We have a website I invite you to visit. It's www.takingtheinitiative.com. We have an archive there of the last 3 or 4 years of shows. You can kind of look down the list. If there's something you missed or particularly interested in, watch it on your computing device at home. There's also links. We really would love to hear from you if you have some communication, ideas, suggestions, comments. I read them all, so we'd like to hear from you. According to the Pennsylvania Department of Health, depending on the year, 5 to 20% of Pennsylvanians get the flu each year. And depending on the year, 120 to 2,000 Pennsylvanians die from complications related to the flu each year. But there's a lot that each of us can do to protect ourselves and our community against the flu, and there's a lot that we can do in cases of the flu to reduce its severity and time of the illness. After these community announcements, I will be talking to an expert in the flu. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Dr. Ken Redcross is a board-certified internal medicine physician and the founder of Redcross Concierge. Say it for me.
Concierge.
Concierge, a personal medical practice. So even though I've stumbled on the name of your practice, welcome to Taking the Initiative.
Thank you. Don't worry. You are not the first. So you are in company. Don't worry.
Well, Dr. Redcross, let's get right at this topic of the flu.
Yes.
Okay, what is the flu, and how does it differ from a cold?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because the flu, as we all know at this point, we know it's a virus. It's always figuring out, are we dealing with an upper respiratory type virus or are we dealing with influenza? They're very different. I think about an upper respiratory infection is mainly dealing with the nose and the congestion of the ears and the nose. When you're dealing with influenza, you're dealing with body aches, you're dealing with fever. Whenever patients call and they're like, "Doc, I cannot get out of bed. I just feel like I've been hit by a Mack truck," that always clues me into the fact that we're probably dealing with influenza. So they're different.
Can you talk a little, you've already started, about the symptoms of the flu?
Yeah.
And maybe the consequences of it?
Well, you know, the symptoms tend to be that. Usually when you get that low-grade temp, lots of times with colds, we don't necessarily get that. The cold's coming from the rhinovirus and some of the more common viruses that we see. But when we get influenza, it's a little more of a systemic effect. It's not just a little bit of the congestion, but the fever. And as I mentioned, those body aches are key. Because when you get a regular cold, you don't get those aches. But when I hear that, that always clues me in. That also hits the importance of making sure you call me, your doctor, when you first start getting the symptoms. That's so important.
What are some of the kind of consequences of the flu? I mentioned, I guess you can die from complications.
Well, you know, I think we always think about the flu as just something that we just bounce back from, but not all of us do. You know, we have up to 25,000 Americans who can die every year from the flu. So some of the consequences are not just dealing with the flu, but pneumonia.
Oh, yeah.
See, everyone thinks of influenza as just a virus that comes and goes, but you can get a pneumonia from that. And especially in our elderly, those 65 years and older, that obviously is the ultimate consequence that we typically see with influenza.
And I have seen some of those folks in the hospital with pneumonia after that, and it is not a situation anyone wants to be in. One of the things that's always puzzled me is why does the flu tend to be seasonal?
Yeah, you know, the flu loves to propagate in special conditions, cool, dry air. You know, we do our best to try to follow the flu coming from Asia and sweeping over to us, and we try and do our best at trying to guess which strains we're going to be dealing with. So this year's a little weird, right? We've had a lot of that, as I've been talking about patients. It's not a medical term, but bizarre and wacky weather. It's almost as if the flu itself is confused as to what to do and when to kind of infect us, right? Because we have a lot of coming and going as far as where the flu season is headed.
Now, I mean, why is it typically more a kind of winter season?
Well, because just like any other virus, there's certain areas that are perfect for it to kind of grow itself.
Like what areas?
No, when I mean areas, I mean as far as temperature.
Yeah.
Cool, dry air. And like I said,
Really?
it sweeps. Kind of like in dealing with that Zika virus that everyone is finding out about now. It's
Yeah.
been around since 1947. But right now what's happening is that the conditions are perfect for it to kind of come together and start manifesting itself even over here. The flu's no different than the Zika virus. They're separate, but it's still a virus that propagates during certain conditions that are optimal.
How about certain people? Are some people more susceptible? Groups of people,
Yeah.
types of people, and why?
Yeah, we're dealing with immune health, right? The immune system. When we're 65 years and older, you're susceptible to these sort of things because your immune system has been taking a beating for several years.
Oh,
I know. And then we also have our children. And unfortunately, they're obviously susceptible because they have brand new immune systems, seeing all these things in the world now, and how do they process it? So when we have little children and those over the age of 65, unfortunately, those are the groups that tend to be better affected, but due to the immune system deficiencies.
and you know, it seems to me that throughout history, recent history, there have been pandemics of the flu. Is this something we need to worry about much?
You know, I always make sure with patients that we're very vigilant about it because the moment you stop not worrying is when it becomes an issue and a pandemic. This one's a little nervous. It makes me a little nervous this year because this flu season is going to be extending all the way out into May potentially.
Oh.
Because of that weather. I know, you would never think that, but it looks like it actually can. So I don't want people to kind of let the guard down and think that we're kind of out of the woods because we're not. So when we deal with things such as pandemics, for me, it's all about awareness and taking it seriously from the beginning.
Well, one of the ways to take it seriously is taking measures to protect oneself,
Yeah.
to protect one's community, to prevent it. I'm wondering if we could start there before we talk about the shots and some other things like that. What are some of the ordinary things that folks like us can do to prevent getting the flu?
Yeah, one of the ordinary things is the things that we've learned since grade school, right? Wash your hands. You'd be surprised how important that is. It's also about washing your hands long enough and correctly, okay? We give these colds and these viruses to ourselves. We rub our nose, we rub our eyes, you may rub your mouth, and next thing you know, you've totally inoculated yourself. So that's important to make sure. The other thing that's important, you got to make sure you're getting rest. People underestimate the importance of a minimum of 7 hours a day of sleep is extremely important for your overall health. As you go there as well, a new cardiac risk factor, stress. Stress can be a killer. And stress can also make you more susceptible to infection as well. So we all have to figure out, how do we manage our stress? I always talk about that a lot, even with the flu. I talk about meditation. I talk about those things that are important to be able to control your spirit, to be able to really battle these viruses that do come around. And a lot of that is being centered and being very, very healthy and mindful.
How about, are there dietary, if we eat different, or is that just not make any difference when it comes to the flu virus?
That's a great question because there's a lot of studies back and forth, right? We always talk about some of the better diets, Mediterranean diet, for instance, a lot of fish in that. I tend to believe that those diets tend to be very, very helpful. They have a lot of natural probiotic, a lot of things that are very important for our immune health. Obviously a lot better than fast foods and some of those things which have a lot of things that are genetically modified and not good for our immune system. I don't know if there's been necessarily the perfect study, but if we had to put our hat on something, the Mediterranean study gets a lot of good publicity for it being a good one for our bodies and for our systems.
And it seems like about once a month I do a health-related show. Almost everybody recommends proper exercise. Does that have anything to do with the flu?
No, exercise is important. Exercise is important for our general health. Once again, there's been some good studies of whether you should kind of exercise through the flu in order to get better or when you're sick. Studies said it's probably not the best idea. You know why? Because you're sweating, you're losing a lot of good fluid, you're losing all that fluid just with having influenza in general through the sweating. So you have to be mindful of that. But moderate exercise throughout, there's no problem, but not the intense exercise that you may be getting.
Well, let's, one quick question.
Please.
What do you think about these alcohol sanitation stations that are everywhere?
You hit on a big one there.
Oh, I thought so.
That's a tough one. All right. So I always talk about the fact that there's nothing better than good old-fashioned soap and water. Nothing's better. But it's tough, right? I'm in New York City. You're touching everything in the trains, and that's all we kind of have is the alcohol sanitation. It's not the best, but I like that better than nothing, okay? But if you can get somewhere with soap and water, please, guys, make that extra step because it's actually not as good as soap and water. That we know, and it ends up drying your hands out. It can cause a lot of other challenges. But definitely soap and water is the way to go.
We've even had somebody here on Taking the Initiative talking about kind of the superbugs that are evolving, you know, and all that. And he really finds that some of the excess use of the alcohol things he thinks is part of helping bacteria morph into these superbugs. So anyway, well, maybe not. Not
yeah.
quite.
Yeah, I don't
buy
know
into
about
that one. But you do buy in, I'm sure, into the flu shots. I want to ask about the flu shots.
Okay.
First, a short personal story. I get a flu shot every fall. But my wife is one of those people who, and she is every day in contact with children and other adults. She's a music director in a church. She's one of those people who has always resisted getting a flu shot. Now, I came home from the hospital recently from open heart surgery, and I was worried about whether she could bring the flu in the house, and I made her get a flu shot.
Right.
I mean, I didn't make her, but I really pressured. She got one.
Okay, good.
She came home that night, she was coughing, she didn't feel good, she said it was because of the shot, it was all my fault, but she was better the next morning. Now, it sounds like she's bought into the fallacies about the flu shot. Okay. Will you talk about that?
I definitely will. That's a wonderful story that I hear a lot in my practice. You know, I don't always buy into the flu shot, actually. My practice is a little more holistic. So some years we do a better job with the flu shot. This year we've done a good one. The H1N1 year, we did it, and a lot of people got sick. As far as what your wife unfortunately went through, and I'm glad you won in dealing with that fallacy, you know, everyone wonders if you get the flu shot, can it get you sick? I want everyone to understand it is a killed, inactivated virus. It is dead. And I've only known one person in this world to come back from the dead, and I think you as a reverend know who that probably was. And it wasn't the flu shot, okay? So everyone could rest assured it will not come back to make you sick. Now, can you feel like you have a little chill here and there? Yes, because don't forget, your body is mounting a response. Your body is saying, hey, I feel something here. Should I start fighting this? So those are your antibodies forming, but it will not get you sick. So please don't let that fallacy keep you from getting the flu shot.
So why is it important to get the flu shot? I mean, I know
I'll tell you.
It's important to me, but I know it's not 100% effective.
Well, I'll tell you this. While it isn't 100% effective, when we don't get the flu shot, you see what's happening over in the Ukraine. So in the Ukraine, there wasn't a big initiative for them to go out and get their flu shot. So there you have 3.2 million people who have the flu. And it ends up being the avian flu. So it's a big deal when you don't get it. So it's about first-line prevention first, if at ever possible. Or if not, you get that pandemic that you're talking about. This year's flu shot is a good one, and I would definitely suggest that everyone goes out and gets it this time.
I have a bunch of more questions to ask about this and about some of the things that are on the table, but we need to take a brief break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. I'm Reverend Bill Kunze, and here to talk with me about the flu is Dr. Ken Redcross, a board-certified internal medicine physician and the founder of Redcross Concierge, a personalized medical practice. I just want to finish up on the flu shot. Where we were, what is the best time to get the flu shot? And how far in the season is it too late to bother?
All right, great question. So the best thing to do is you get it at the beginning of the season, which tends to be at October. So October is the best and optimal time. Now, the bigger thing is this. It's been quiet. It's been quiet in New York, and when you look at the maps, it's even been a little quiet here, but starting to rev up. So everyone says, well, Doc, it's already February. Do I still need to get my shot? And my answer is a resounding yes, absolutely. Because keep in mind, it takes about 2 weeks for the flu shot to even kick in and do what it's supposed to do. So therefore, you start today in February, you're going to only get protection in March. And like I said, this thing can extend all the way to May this year. So absolutely, you need to make sure you're getting your flu shot.
So even though it feels late in the season, you still might get yourself some protection.
Absolutely.
Now, the flu, it's not 100%
No.
effective, but am I not correct in saying that it also reduces the severity of the flu, even if you get it a little different virus?
I wouldn't say the flu shot does so much as that, except to hope that whichever flu you get, we actually hit the strains in that particular vaccine so that you don't get ill. And so it's something that you can just kind of brush by as a little speed bump and keep going. That's what we hope.
Yeah. Well, nonetheless, a lot of people are going to get the flu each year, right? And you strongly recommend preparing for it just like we might for a nor'easter or a hurricane.
Like we almost had to last night, right? With those.
So you even recommend a flu survival kit.
Absolutely.
And you have some of the items from your flu survival kit right on the table.
I do.
What is a flu survival kit?
Well, I'll tell you this. One thing you had mentioned before was about the CDC and about the importance of figuring out these items, because the CDC says no matter what we do, we're all destined for 2 to 3 colds a year or throughout the season. And our kids are destined for maybe 8 to 10. So my thing is, well, what the heck do we do when we've done the flu shot and we still get sick? So that's why I came up with the flu survival kit. Now, the big thing here is, just like you mentioned, I love to compare it to that of a natural disaster because, for instance, during hurricane season, we all know what to do. We prepare and we stockpile. And these are some of those things that I like to talk about. The first one is a probiotic. Now, I think at this point, we've all heard of probiotics and we know that they're good for us. But a lot of us may not understand that when we get sick, we lose a lot of the good bacteria in our gut that is extremely important for our immune health. So therefore, a probiotic is perfect to kind of reseed and reline your gut with that good immune-fighting bacteria. The second thing I have here is Oscillo, and it's probably my favorite thing here. I call it the best kept secret, but even though, quite honestly, in Europe, they've been using it for 50 years, so it's really not that big of a secret. It's a homeopathic remedy. It's been shown to decrease the severity and the duration of illness when taken within the first 24 to 48 hours. And back to your other question, it's also good for kids 2 years of age and older, which is very important because some years ago, we didn't know what to give our kids when they came down with colds. So Oscillo has a place for that. As we move here, we have proof that mom is always right. Good old chicken noodle soup.
Chicken soup.
Chicken soup.
Now that shocks me. I thought that was just, urban legend.
No, mom is never wrong. We know that. And she now has a little bit of proof because some studies do show that it actually slows the migration of white blood cells to the areas that can wreak havoc, such as to our lungs where we get coughing and to our nasal passages where we get sneezing. So chicken noodle soup is the way to go.
Wow.
And then as we move a little further here, we have zinc. Now, zinc itself is an essential mineral for the immune system just at baseline. Some wonderful studies with zinc, once again, when taken early, can also reduce the severity of the flu. I like it, but I need to make sure you take something on your stomach with zinc because it can make your stomach a little upset.
A strong zinc pill, I've noticed, can give me an upset stomach.
It can, but it shouldn't deter you from making sure you take it to help with your flu symptoms because it's very, very valuable.
And it passes, the upset tends to pass in 5 minutes.
Exactly, exactly. And then last but not least, I have vitamin D3.
Oh, yes.
Now that just made my cut. There's been some new studies that said that when we have vitamin D deficiency, we actually are more susceptible to getting the flu and getting sicker. It's so important that there's a group called the Organic and Natural Health Association that has decided to focus the entire year on getting the word out about vitamin D. And through their website, powerd.org, allowing us to check our own vitamin D at home. That's how important vitamin D is becoming now. So that made the cut because I realized that it needed to be part of their survival kit.
Especially, isn't it, in the winter months for those of us who live in northern climates,
Yeah.
right? When we don't get much sun or anything like that.
Not only that, too, you bring up a valuable point. So here we are in the Northeast. You're right. We don't get as much sun as when I was in California, where we got a lot more sun. But here, the other thing we deal with is what do we do now? We're all on our iPads. We're all inside. We're on our computers. We're not going out as much either. And so that's also something that's actually contributing to our vitamin D deficiency.
So you'd recommend that someone have, in effect, these 5 things in a basket or bag or box in their home as a kind of preparatory flu disaster situation.
Absolutely. I wish I could bring all of the viewers over to the Red Cross household because they'd see all of these things kind of packed up because it works. And I've had patients who it works for, and so, it's proven. And so because of that, it's so valuable to start this stuff early, everyone. That's the key.
What about, you see advertised now some of the still relatively new doctor-prescribed medications for the flu. You have any comment on that?
We always have Tamiflu. Tamiflu is a medication that's out there. Now, once again, nothing is perfect, right? It's helpful and it's valuable, but you have to get to your doctor usually within the first 48 hours before we can give it to you.
When you don't even know if you really have the flu yet.
When you don't know if you have the flu, and not only that, when you feel like I said earlier, you got hit by a truck and you can't get out of bed. And next thing you know, here it is 72 hours later and you're deciding, maybe I should see the doc. Yeah. So it's a little bit harder to use.
And you get an appointment a week from now.
And then you get an appointment later, and by that time, guess what? You're healthy.
Yeah. So you don't see as big a role of that. How about any other over-the-counter things you have one that you recommend, or others,
honestly,
or some to stay away from?
Well, I don't think that there's much. You'll get patients who kind of live by certain things, whether it be airborne, emergency, and so forth, and they'll swear by that. I don't really deter that, especially if patients feel like, Doc, no matter what you say, I've gotten better on it, it works for me. So I don't really dispel a lot that's out there. So I can't think of anything offhand that is at least dangerous. Whether they're efficacious or not, some of the data may be out there. But a lot of the things that I love naturally, a lot of the things I brought today, because these are things that we all can pick up right when we leave today.
It looks like all of these could be bought in any pharmacy store. Except you might have to go to the grocery store for mom's soup.
You have to. But you never be surprised. Sometimes in the pharmacies you'll see it too.
Yes, there are little sections like that as well. Where can people get more information about the flu? I have another topic I want to get to with you, but any last words about the flu?
Well, the first important thing, please don't underestimate the importance of stress. Like I said, I'm really big on that in my practice. We're all busy these days. We all are trying to get that new promotion. We're all trying to be there. But if you want to be there for your families, you got to realize that stress is a killer, and you got to come together and be mindful. Take 10 minutes just for yourself to do nothing. Very important. So keep your hands washed and stay healthy.
We've got a few minutes left that I've tried to save because I want to ask about your special practice.
Oh, sure.
The Redcross Concierge. What is the concept? How does it differ from conventional medical practice?
Well, because I like to say, this is healthcare on your terms, on the patient's terms. I provide access for my patients. I provide convenience. I make house calls. I have my little black bag.
Would you repeat that?
I know. I make house calls.
Oh, wow.
Yes, I do. I have my black bag right in the car. I promise you that. And there's nothing better than delivering care to someone in their home. For me, I always tell patients, I like to get into your soul. It's so important for your health. It's not just the fact that we're dealing with hypertension, but what's causing it? What's happening at home? And so being able to be a concierge physician and to make house calls and travel with them sometimes to their visits and be there beside them, it's so important. It's a spiritual way to me to be able to deliver care and really bring back the passion in medicine and really bring back health. And patients love it. I've been very, very blessed.
Is this, I can't say I've heard of this before. Is this like Are you a solo item here, or is this something that's a new movement?
You know, it's a little bit of a new movement. It's funny, I started back in 2007. I was at a practice, I had a practice in LA in the Beverly Hills area, and I had an assistant who was really upset because her executive was driving her crazy because he was sick, and he couldn't get to the doctor because he was too busy. And something dawned on me to say, you know, tell him I'll come and see him. And she said, really? And I said, yeah, why not? So I got my stethoscope, got in the car. She got me on the lot, and I went there to see him. And he's like, oh my God, doc, I can't believe this was the best thing. He says, how much do I owe you? I said, you know, I don't know if I know how much you owe me, but I was happy to be there for him. And I said, you know what? I think that's a model. And so what we're starting to see now is around the nation, patients are deserving more. And I think that's my big thing. I couldn't deal with seeing 30 patients a day. How can I get into the soul of 30 patients with the average time of 7.5 minutes? That's the average time that your internist or family doc spends with you. And so I figured, once again, patients deserve more of my time. So now my appointments can run an hour, they can run 2. Whatever is necessary for that patient to get to health and healing is where we're headed.
What about cost? Everybody's worried about cost. You're investing a lot of time in people.
I am, and you know, cost is a little bit different. I can do it a couple of ways. Lots of times I have a retainer that a patient can pay annually. I can also do a per visit sort of thing if I'm going to make a house call. That can range from $500 a month to $300 or $400 a month, which is not a lot when you're figuring out that a lot of people now have high deductibles. Their insurance doesn't kick in until you meet $3,500 deductible anyway. So why wait for that? Why not have somebody come and deliver care to you on your time?
Where can people get a little more information both about your practice and the concept?
Sure. So my website is drredcross.com, Dr. Redcross, just like the American Red Cross. I also have a Twitter handle at Dr. Redcross, and my Facebook is Dr. Redcross MD.
Well, thank you. Thank you for helping protect everybody watching against the flu, and for sharing a little bit about your practice as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on tonight.
And we want to thank you for tuning in. We'll be here the same time, same place next week. Until then, there's more positively different television.